Ever have that feeling? You're working just incredibly hard in the practice, long hours, putting everything in, but then you look at the numbers at the end of the month, and they don't seem to match the effort.
Oh, absolutely. It's a really common frustration.
Yeah, maybe you're a dental practice owner thinking, why am I working so much harder but actually collecting less?
Yeah.
Or maybe things are okay, but you just want to get to that next level.
Right. Looking for that growth spurt.
Exactly. Yeah. That sounds familiar to you. Well, you're definitely not alone.
Yeah.
So today we're doing a deep dive specifically for you.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to unpack what production really means in a dental practice. And more importantly, uncover some really actionable strategies to boost it, significantly boost it,
Yeah.
potentially without needing a whole flood of new patients.
That's the key part often.
Right. We've been digging into expert insights, looking at research on, elevating practice production, profitability. Our mission here, it's really to pull out the practical, impactful stuff, things that can improve your cash flow, help optimize how things run, and generally let you work smarter, not just harder.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into this because honestly, what we've found is fascinating. The path to being more profitable, it might literally be hiding in plain sight, like right there in your existing practice.
And what's really interesting, I think, is that word itself, production. It can be such a catch-all term, can it?
Yeah, definitely.
Just clarifying that, figuring out what you mean by it, that's step one. It tells you where to actually focus your efforts if you want, real growth.
So what do doctors usually mean when they say, I need to increase production?
Well, almost always, when a doctor says they want to grow production, it boils down to needing more money. Simple as that, really. Now, that could be because cash flow is tight. They need it to pay the bills, keep the lights on, or they might be stable, but they just want more disposable income, maybe for investment or personal goals.
Right.
Understanding which of those it is, that specific financial goal, that's pretty critical for figuring out the right strategy.
Okay, so if production basically means more money, where does a practice owner even start? Is it always about marketing for new patients, or is there something more fundamental, maybe something inside the practice already?
That is exactly the right place to start thinking. And the first critical question, honestly, is this. Are you in network with any dental insurances?
Ah, the insurance question. Okay.
Yeah, it's huge. Because,
Yeah.
look, quite often a practice actually has enough patients. Like the chairs are full. The real problems are often things like incorrect insurance submission or, and this is a big one, adjusting off way too much money.
Adjusting off, you mean like the write-offs?
Exactly. The difference between what you charge, your standard fee, and the lower amount the insurance plan actually pays. You have to write off or adjust off that difference.
Gotcha.
And if you're doing tons of work but not getting paid properly for it because of those adjustments, well, are you really being productive even if your schedule looks packed?
That's a really good point. You could be busy, but not profitable.
Precisely. So step one is getting a clear picture, a full landscape of what's happening with insurance in your specific practice. Which plans do your actual patients have? You need to know your current patient base inside and out when it comes to their coverage.
That makes so much sense. So it's less about chasing the unknown new patient and more about optimizing the patients you already serve, especially how insurance fits in.
You got it.
And that idea leads us right into, well, looking for some immediate wins, right? Optimizing those internal operations. You're saying the first priority for growth should usually be increasing revenue without needing to sign up for more insurance plans.
Absolutely. That should be the goal initially. And the ideal place to start, the place that's often, frankly, neglected, it's the patient recall system.
Recall? Okay, like getting patients back in for their cleanings.
Exactly. And here's a, honestly, kind of astonishing insight we found. Many practices are running behind on recall. We're talking like 8 or 9 months behind schedule for a lot of their patients.
8 or 9 months? Wow, that's almost missing a whole visit per year.
That's exactly the impact. Think about it, potentially one whole extra hygiene visit, maybe exams, x-rays per patient per year, just lost because the system isn't tight.
So fixing that, just getting patients back on a regular, say, 6-month cycle.
Can generate significant immediate revenue. And here's the beauty. You're doing it with your existing patient base. No marketing costs, no new patient acquisition efforts needed for this particular boost.
That sounds like a gold mine just sitting there.
It often is, especially for practices that are out of network or completely fee-for-service. For them, optimizing recall, hands down the fastest way to see growth.
Wow, 8 to 9 months. I'm still stuck on that. Have you seen practices turn that around quickly? Like, what's the real-world impact look like when they just, buckle down on recall.
Oh, definitely. I worked with a practice they were really feeling the pinch with cash flow consistency. They decided to dedicate, I think it was just 2 or 3 weeks, to a real focused recall effort. Calling patients, texting, emailing, whatever, worked for their patients who were overdue.
And what happened?
The results were almost immediate. Within that first month, you saw the hygiene schedule just fill right up. That predictable revenue from routine care started flowing in consistently.
Nice.
But it wasn't just the money, though that was huge. The team felt less chaotic, more organized. The doctor was visibly less stressed because the schedule wasn't just full, it was like predictably full.
Yeah, predictability must be a huge relief.
Massive. It really underscores that strategy. Maximize what you've got your current patients before you start constantly chasing new ones. That chase is often way less efficient. Get those quick wins internally first, then maybe think about layering on the longer-term marketing stuff.
It's really empowering, isn't it? Knowing that a big part of the solution might already be inside your own practice walls.
Completely.
And speaking of internal factors, let's circle back to that feeling of working harder, collecting less. You mentioned insurance adjustments.
Huh.
It feels like that's where a lot of the squeeze comes from, right?
No.
Adjustments go up, benefits kind of stay flat.
That's a huge piece of the puzzle, yeah. Profitability gets squeezed. And that's precisely why it is so critical for practices to know exactly how much they are writing off or adjusting off for each individual insurance company they participate with.
But how do they even find that out? Is it complicated?
It's almost shocking, but most practices are already sitting on this data. It's usually right there, hidden maybe, but available within their existing practice management software.
Really? In the software they use every day?
Yep. Most practice owners, and sometimes even the front office teams, just don't realize these reports exist or how easy they can be to generate.
So finding out your adjustment rate for each insurance plan, that's the key.
It's not just data, it's like a roadmap. Imagine knowing, okay, we write off 15 cents on the dollar for Delta, but wow, we're writing off 30 cents for Cigna.
Okay, yeah, that would make you think differently.
Exactly. It allows for incredibly informed decisions. Maybe you need to renegotiate fees with Cigna. Maybe you need to strategically drop them if the write-offs are just too high. Maybe you focus on attracting more Delta patients. It turns those raw numbers into actual actionable intelligence. It helps you optimize collections and really get the most value from the work you're already doing.
Are there benchmarks? Like what's a good or bad adjustment rate?
Generally speaking, you want to aim to keep those overall adjustments somewhere between, say, 20 to 25 cents on the dollar. So writing off 20–25%. And ideally, for practices that are in-network, you'd like to see 60% or more of your total patient base covered by some form of insurance you accept. Gives you a solid foundation.
Okay, 25 cents on the dollar, 60% insured. Those are useful targets. But I can almost hear someone listening thinking, okay, great, but my software's ancient, or I barely have time to see patients, let alone become a data expert. What's like the very first practical step if someone feels overwhelmed?
That's totally fair, and it's simpler than it sounds. The first step isn't to become a data whiz overnight, it's just to ask.
Ask who?
Ask your front office lead or your billing person or whoever handles insurance. Just say, hey, can you try and pull a report that shows our top 5 insurance plans and what our adjustment percentage is for each one?
Just ask the question.
Just ask. That opens the door. Even if they haven't done it before, most software platforms have some kind of standard report for this, maybe called insurance analysis or adjustments by payer, something like that. This isn't about adding a huge task. It's about uncovering where your hard work is actually paying off and where it might not be.
Okay, that feels more manageable. Just start by asking.
Exactly. But, optimizing reimbursement, it doesn't actually stop just with understanding the write-offs. Our deep dive also found this other layer. It's about how you actually describe the services you provide.
You mean the billing codes?
Precisely. You really need to pay attention to the specific codes you're using when you bill insurance because different codes often mean different reimbursement levels, even for procedures that seem pretty similar.
Huh. So getting the code right can actually change how much you get paid.
Absolutely. It can make a huge difference in your overall production, your actual collections.
Yeah. Are you saying insurance companies are kind of hoping dentists don't pay close attention to this? Like they save money if practices just keep using the same old codes?
Well, I wouldn't say it's always intentional malice, but Yeah, essentially.
Hmm.
The system benefits the insurance company when practices just operate on autopilot, doing the same thing over and over. Inertia works in their favor.
Inertia. Okay.
So if you're a doctor and you're complaining, gosh, I'm just not making what I used to 5 years ago, a really good question to ask yourself is, am I still using the exact same billing codes I was using 5 years ago?
Uh, because codes change,
Mm-hmm.
or there are better ones.
Both. Codes get updated, new ones are introduced, old ones get retired. And sometimes there's a different code, maybe a more specific one, that better reflects the complexity of what you did that just happens to reimburse at a higher rate.
Can you give an example, like where might this actually play out?
Sure. Think about a complex restoration. Maybe you did a core buildup before placing a crown. There might be separate codes or a specific combination of codes that accurately reflects both procedures and gets you paid significantly more than just using a single, perhaps more generic, crown code. We're talking potentially hundreds of dollars difference on a single procedure sometimes.
Wow. Okay. But what about risk? If a practice has been using certain codes for years and getting paid, is it risky to suddenly change how they bill? Could it trigger audits or something?
That's a common concern, but the risk is actually very low if you are billing accurately and ethically for the services you actually performed. This isn't about finding loopholes or, upcoding fraudulently. It's about being precise. It's about being current with the code set and ensuring the code you use truly reflects the work done. It simply ensures you're compensated fairly according to the plan's rules.
So it's not about gaming the system. It's about understanding the rules of the game better.
Exactly. It really raises that question. Are you accidentally leaving money on the table just because you're sticking to old habits? Or are you being proactive, adapting, and making sure you maximize every legitimate reimbursement opportunity?
You said earlier it's like playing chess, not checkers, with your billing codes.
Yeah.
I like that analogy. What does playing chess look like day to day for a busy dentist? How do they even find the time?
Yeah, it means being strategic, thinking a couple of moves ahead. It's not necessarily about doing more work. It's about describing the work you are doing more effectively on that claim form.
Okay.
So practically, it might mean knowing when a specific extraction code reflecting surgical removal is appropriate versus a simple extraction code,
Mm.
or understanding the nuances between different codes for fillings based on surfaces or materials. It often involves maybe investing a little time in continuing education specifically on coding updates, or maybe consulting with a billing expert or using coding resources. It's about staying informed and being really precise.
Makes sense. Stay informed, be precise.
Yeah. And, speaking of strategy and being precise, we can't overlook the power of how the actual day is structured, the schedule itself.
Ah, the daily schedule. So it's not just about filling every single slot.
Not just filling it, but how you fill it. We're talking about creating a good mix of services throughout the doctor's day, rather than, say, doing only crown preps all morning or only fillings all afternoon.
Interesting. So moving away from blocking out huge chunks for just one type of procedure,
Mm-hmm.
what's the benefit of mixing it up more?
Oh, the benefits are huge, actually. Think about it. When you have a mix, maybe a crown prep, then a couple of new patient exams, some fillings, maybe slotting in hygiene checks smoothly, keeping an emergency slot open, everything tends to run more on time.
Okay, I can see that. Less setup and tear down for the same thing over and over.
Exactly. Doctors aren't running late trying to get to hygiene checks squeezed between two long procedures. Production per hour often goes up because you're working more efficiently, less downtime between those very different types of appointments.
What else?
Sterilization can keep up better because the flow is more varied. The team is generally happier because there's less frantic rushing and more predictability. And crucially, the doctor isn't completely wiped out mentally and physically at the end of the day from doing the same demanding procedure back to back to back.
That last one sounds pretty major for preventing burnout.
It really is. Creating an ideal schedule, one that has this kind of planned variety built in day after day. It creates so much more consistency in the daily operations, consistency in the practice's production levels. It just brings a level of comfort and predictability for the doctor that's hard to overstate.
So what does this all really mean then? A smarter schedule isn't just about the bottom line. It's about the whole day, the whole practice feeling better.
Yeah, if you zoom out, that's the big picture. Designing the schedule thoughtfully with that mix, it creates that predictability I mentioned, both operationally and financially. Knowing roughly what to expect each day in terms of flow and production reduces stress enormously. It's optimizing the entire workflow, not just isolated tasks. And that leads directly to a more sustainable, less draining, and ultimately more profitable practice overall.
This has been incredibly insightful, this deep dive. It really shows that boosting dental practice production, increasing profitability, doesn't always mean chasing endless new patients or sinking tons of money into marketing.
So much starts internally.
Right. It starts right there with really understanding your current situation. We've kind of redefined production as basically meaning more money, right?
Getting clear on the goal.
We talk about the huge, often overlooked role of smart insurance management, knowing those adjustment rates.
Knowing where the money is actually going, yeah.
We hit on optimizing patient recall, that low-hanging fruit for immediate revenue from existing patients.
The quick wins.
Uncovering that potential in your insurance write-off reports. The data you probably already have.
Turning data into action.
And then, how strategic billing codes, plain chestnut checkers, can really impact what you get paid.
Being precise and current.
And finally, yeah, balancing that daily schedule, not just for production numbers, but for the sanity and efficiency of the entire team, including the doctor.
It all connects. A smoother day often means a more profitable day.
It seems like any practice owner would be, as you said, all ears for ways to get claims paid faster and fuller and just improve that bottom line. These strategies feel really tangible.
They are, and they offer real solutions. The biggest hurdle, honestly, it's usually just finding the time, carving out that mental space to really think about how to implement these things in your own unique practice environment.
Yeah, stepping back from the day-to-day whirlwind.
Exactly. But even small, consistent changes in these areas, they can genuinely lead to really significant positive shifts over time.
Okay, so as we wrap up, maybe something for you, the listener, to think about this week. Consider this. What's one single operational assumption you hold right now? Maybe it is how you schedule your day, or maybe it's how you think about, or don't think about, your insurance reports. What assumption might actually be costing you the most? And how could simply questioning it, just looking at it fresh, potentially unlock some significant new growth, maybe even some unexpected profitability?